Hello, I'm Penny Meadmore and I'm a gardener and I'm also a viticultural agronomist, which means I get to work in vineyards like this. This is Kerry Vale on the Welsh borders of Shropshire. Now, if things were different, I would be at the Shrewsbury Flower Show right now, and quite possibly so would you. And I've been there a couple of times before, and I've worked in the lecture theatre where I've talked about gardening. My particular interest is producing fruit in your own garden, and this year I planned to talk about growing vines for wine. Now, obviously, I'm not there, but even better, I am in a vineyard where I can show you the real thing instead. Now, what you might not know is that most of the world's wines are grown between 30 and 50 degrees latitude. There's two broad bands around the globe, and that's where conditions are best. When you get to the south coast of England, you're already at about 51 degrees, and by the time you make it to Shrewsbury, it's nearly 53, which means that this is what's called marginal conditions. However, Kerry Vale Vineyard and others in the county are evidence that it's perfectly possible to grow grapes that produce award-winning wines if you get the right site. Sunshine and warmth are key. So if you are going to plant in your garden, you will need a south-facing wall, or if you've got more space, preferably a south-facing slope, and then you're angling the plants directly at the best of the sunshine. If you put in a row like this, you need to make sure that it's running north to south, so that when the sun comes up, travels round and goes back down, both sides of these rows get an even coating of light and warmth. Now, most people think that you need chalk to grow vines. Unfortunately, that's not true. You can grow them anywhere you like. And actually, they're really tolerant to all different kinds of pHs, from quite acidic to really alkaline. But the one thing they require is a good drainage. A vine does not like soggy feet. So provided the water is going to move away, it doesn't matter whether you've got clay or sand or gravel or even peat. Okay, so you've got the site and you've got a plot. The next thing you need to do is choose yourself a variety. And I would say, get down to a good specialist nursery or look online. If your drink of choice is let's say it's a Shiraz, a big meaty Shiraz, or it's an aromatic Chenin Blanc, well then, sadly, you are never going to grow those to make wine in this country. What we do best here, and Kerry Vale is a really good example of that, is we make predominantly white wines, which are very fresh, very fruity, quite light. And particularly we make something called a good base wine, which goes into a secondary ferment, and that's how we get sparklers. And British wines are as good as any across the world when it comes to those. So that's what you're aiming at. Look for a variety that will cope with our climatic conditions. Now, when you buy it, it will almost certainly be grafted. So let me show you what the graft looks like. Yep. This knobbly bit is the join between the two plants. So below here we have the roots, which are resistant to a minuscule but lethal insect called Phylloxera. And then above it we've got the variety that you choose. In this case we have Solaris. Over the other side we've got Phoenix. And here at Kerry Vale they also have Rondo. That's 2 whites and 1 red. Now, when you come up the stem here, these are about 10 years old, so that's how you can expect your skeleton structure to look after about 10 years. You come to the fruiting zone. And now I'm going to attempt to explain pruning in a couple of sentences, and I should tell you that there are any number of lengthy YouTube videos and lectures in much more detail. Basically, when your plant arrives, you spend a season growing it to your lowest wire, which is about here. And then you chop it off, just one stem, and you chop it off. And over the next summer, loads of shoots come out and grow up. The following winter, you choose 2 good shoots and you bend them down and tie them in. And then you cut 2 more back to just 3 buds, and everything else you cut away. So anything that's growing lower down, as for example this one, you just pull off. They'll be delighted I did that, trust me. And then you've got what's called a double guillot system. There are lots of different pruning regimes and shapes, but this is probably the easiest. And then every winter you repeat that action. About February, maybe March, you take some sharp secateurs and you go out and you tie down 2 new fresh ones and you chop back 2 more to 3 buds. And then you get all your fruit in this area here. As harvest approaches, there's a magic moment called veraison, and it's at that point that these berries, which are currently rock hard and dark green, start to soften and take on colour, and the sugars in them begin to accumulate and the acids begin to disperse. And as you get closer and closer to the point of picking, there's this increase in sugars and a reduction in acids, and a perfect moment when, if you are a winemaker, the two are exactly where you need them to be. Now, somewhere like Kerry Vale vineyard will be using hydrometers and refractometers to measure exactly. If you're making wine at home, then you can just try squeezing a drop on your tongue to see whether it tastes good to you, or you could invest in an inexpensive refractometer, and a drop of juice from one grape will tell you what your sugars are. If you're going to pick them and you actually want to eat them as fruit, then pick them with a really long stem and put the stem into water and store them somewhere cool, and they should apparently keep for 4 or more weeks. If you are picking them for making wine, then pick them and keep them cool. Don't bruise them, particularly if you want to make white wine out of red or black grapes. You want to minimize the contact between the juice and the skins, which is where the color is, and then press them as soon as possible. Takes a few months to make a good wine, but if you get it right, you should have one by this time next year, and you can raise a glass to the real Shrewsbury Flower Show. On behalf of myself and our official photographer, Paul Elton, we hope to see you there.